Hey, hello, and welcome to another episode of the Snap Count. My name is Emilio Calderon, and I'm joined by a man who is ranked right behind Josh Allen in diversified crop production. His name is Caleb Catlin.
That
Caleb, if you ran a farm and it specialized in one fruit or vegetable, what would it be? Your choice, whatever your reasoning.
tomatoes. We're
Tomatoes.
we're we're gonna run this like an old Italian fucking farm. Big pasta type energy over here. Lots of fucking flour.
Oh,
Lots of tomatoes. We're gonna be full pasta head if I'm running a farm like that.
hmm. Oh, that's really nice.
Dressed
Honestly, I
like
thought.
dressed like a soprano with a garden hat
Oh, I
on.
see.
All that.
It started wholesome and then it turned into The Sopranos. Okay, which
Yeah.
I guess can still be kind of wholesome.
Well, it's the same like Godfather 2 type environment
Yeah, yeah.
where it's like something sort of bubbling underneath, but it's supposed to be kind of chill. That's kind of what the vibe is.
Oh, I see. So
Living in America and shit.
it's a front, but the tomatoes are actually pretty good.
Exactly. Like bomb ass
It's both.
pasta, but like, meeting at seven type shit.
Yeah. All right. We're gonna get right into it because we have a lot to talk about. This was a really good week of NFL games, I think. So get right to the pre-snap. Not a lot of major news for NFL Week Two. Bengals receiver Jamar Chase played in their Week Two loss away to the Chiefs, but the bigger news, at least here for that game, was several sources claim that he will not renegotiate with the Bengals for the rest of the season. Additional claims say that he is, quote, disappointed by how negotiations went and that he felt a deal would get done before the rest of the season. So that is a situation to monitor. That situation, based on this info we're given, it may not change. It's interesting to see how it'll play out with the T. Higgins contract negotiations. If other deals, i.e., trades, come on the table. But we'll see how it develops over the rest of the season. Thursday night football, Dolphins quarterback Tua Tagovailoa exited Miami's game with concussion. It's the third known of his career, which was I forgot where I read that, but I thought that was a. It's strange, but it's a good way of putting it in perspective for something we're still trying to learn more about in the NFL with regards to concussions and longer term CTE as their known concussion of his career.
Yeah.
Mike McDaniel offered no timetable for his return. This was just interesting too because there were very visible calls for Tua to consider retirement, which both the team and he have been quiet on. Sources seem firm that he is not even considering it. Also, just a friendly reminder, because this is something I had to remind myself, is that the concussion protocol is a 5-step program with no clear timetable. That is, players can only return to play once they are fully cleared by third-party doctor, as opposed to choosing to play through an injury or if they're not fully recovered, et cetera, et cetera. And then one more bit of injury news is Vikings receiver Justin Jefferson exited their game Sunday with what Kevin O'Connell called a quad contusion. He did say, quote, hopefully, that is not hopeful, that Jefferson can be considered day to day. There's no update on that as we're starting this pod, but that'll be interesting to monitor too, given their good start to the season. But yeah, let's get right into it. We're going to go mostly
The,
in order here.
the
We'll
Cooper Cup
start.
injury.
Oh my gosh, thank you for reminding. I'm so sorry I didn't write that. But yes, Cooper Cup also exited the Rams' loss to the Cardinals Sunday with, I believe, an ankle injury. It is a leg injury. So the Rams continue their wonderful bill of health to start the season. That will also be a situation monitor, especially for fantasy league owners. Rough start to the season. I don't play fantasy, but I imagine it's been a rough start to the season.
I talked with Svets for like an hour about fantasy shit, and he was like, "This is very stressful for everyone in his fantasy group or whatever."
Yeah, no runaway quarterback. A lot of surprising running backs. Real
Tyreek
up and
Hill
down.
have a quarterback.
Yeah. Shout out Josh Fetz, by the way. Shout out DMV. Yeah, let's get into it. The the meat on the bone here. So we're gonna run down through every game that's happened so far. Obviously, we're gonna miss tonight's Monday Night Football if you're watching or listening to
Do,
this
do,
on
I
Monday as
think
it
I think
drops.
we have the same prediction. Yeah.
I think so, but yeah, we'll start with recapping all the games. So we'll start with Thursday Night Football. Actually, So yeah, that was the Bills going into Miami, and this was a lot more comfortable than I thought it'd be. The Bills won 31-10. I'll let you start, Caleb. What did you learn from this game?
Um, I learned that the Dolphins really need Ryan Tannehill if they want to salvage whatever's left of the season. Thompson looked aggressive. Like
Aggressive.
in fairness, he only played like half the game, but it did give off a very Bryce Young in its isms, very timid, very scary,
Yeah.
which is insane because he has better frontline help and he has better targets. So, I mean, I imagine if they want to salvage the season, if fantasy owners don't want to get gray hairs, for all the Tyreek Hill owners out there, they'd want to go the Tannehill route. That's if they want to salvage that. And I mean, the Bills look. I don't know. The Bills match up well against the Dolphins, and it's a good divisional rivalry anyway. So I imagine them splitting this year. But what I learned coming away from this is that maybe the Bills will probably sweep, and they might win the division just by
Your
pure dissension.
your tone here is so funny as a noted Buffalo Bills hater, or I
It
should
does
say converted former Buffalo Bills hater.
it doesn't feel great. Like I don't know, just, like Josh Allen was fine that game, pretty efficient, but a mild 140 yards roughly.
Hmm.
Uh, yeah, it's fine. I didn't really like learn anything about them in relation. I more looked at the
I think that's
Dolphins.
the funny takeaway from this game is like, I've been very high on the Bills since the preseason, and so this game didn't really teach me a lot either. Um, I think they continued to run the ball well. Like you said, Josh Allen wasn't great. He simply had to be efficient, and then second half was a wash after the Tua went out with an injury.
I think
Yeah, my
that's
bigger takeaway.
I guess the bigger issue is that like all those Thursday night games sort of feel that way. Like they always feel like a weird, timid sort of preseason game.
It's because it's fake prime time, which is even for us sickos who enjoy to watch football 24/7, it just doesn't feel right. I will admit that. Yes. But I think my takeaway from this game was I don't want to be hyperbolic, but have we seen the Dolphins ceiling already? Um, yeah, just even in the abstract, they did not look ready to match Buffalo's physicality in that first half. Like Buffalo was very clearly the better team, even without Josh Allen even getting into second gear, really. Um, and I just think back to last season when they did get swept by Buffalo last season, and then they lost handily to both Kansas City and Baltimore. And so now we've got three teams who, for what we think of the Miami, as weird as I think they are, I think they're clearly very talented enough to be in quote Super Bowl contention. But yeah, those are three other contending teams that have now shown that you can play this offense well if you just jam them up early in the play. Like I think the problem with Miami is teams expect to cover the explosives, or they think, oh, they're going to get a few plays off. And then
Yeah,
we have three teams with, granted, Kansas, the Chiefs and the Ravens both had great secondaries last year, but Buffalo, I do want to shout out Christian Benford. He did look really excellent last night in coverage and did get a pick. But we've seen now it's like, yeah, if you guys can't beat us 5-10 yards off the line of scrimmage, then you can have those yards. Like then you're not going to get upfield.
yeah.
And
They play those two deep safeties generally, which
yeah,
seems like a pretty glaring indictment. What I think I joked about this to you last night. I was like, McDonald has huge next like Raiders head coach vibes.
oh Mike McDaniel.
Yeah, McDaniel. Yeah, McDaniel has huge like, oh well, the Raider, like they're looking at it the same way. Like they're gonna can Pierce way too early, and then they're gonna bring in a guy that doesn't really like connect with the Raiders sort of feel, but he's like flashy.
But yeah. How funny would it be for Mike McDaniel to go from Miami to Las Vegas? What a coaching career. Just like culturally speaking, what a coaching career.
It fits. It
It
fits.
does fit. Yeah, what's that? I didn't save this, but I just remember that tweet that said McDaniel's 3 years in Miami. He's finally successfully transitioned from head of Geek Squad at Best Buy to now to B level reality show husband.
We'll get to the Raiders later, but I did have like a larger feeling about them.
Okay, moving on to I don't think we'll have a lot of thoughts on this game. I've already raved about my home team a lot last week. But yeah, one of the Sunday games, the Chargers went into Carolina and they mollywopped the Panthers 26-3. I'll start and just keep it easy. The Chargers really need to evolve this passing game if they want to have further success this season. It's only been two games, but I am already willing to go out on a leg and say this season is a massive success. Justin Herbert went 14 for 20 with only 130 yards. So similar to Josh Allen in the Miami game. But yeah, I mean, J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards looked really great again. J.K. Dobbins rushed for 131 yards on 17 touches. They do play Pittsburgh next week, so I think it's really put up or shut up. Can this offense produce if the run game isn't fully clicking, or if they have to play from behind, when they're not fully in control of the game? That's all I'm looking for from the Chargers.
Yeah, on my end, I was talking with I was talking with Svets last night. He gave me this really wild prompt. I hope he tweeted it so I can quote him more directly. But we were talking, and obviously Bryce Young had that 18 for 26, 80-yard game, right? And
it was 18 for 26 with 84 yards and one interception. Yes.
So he gave me like 10 players, and he was like, do they have more fantasy points than Bryce Young? He named a bunch of, perfect, I got it here. Players that outscored Bryce Young in fantasy today.
This week.
Bo Nix, Mo Alley-Cox, Rashad Bateman, Amir Abdullah, DeAndre Carter, Kyler Juszczyk, Drew Sample, Tutu Atwell, Lil Jordan Humphrey, Miles Sanders. He only beats out Robbie Chosen by like 0.4 points.
I don't play fantasy, but I mean, God, you name dropped Mo Alley-Cox, which was nuts to me. So I'm going to assume this is like the threshold for this is like any receiver who caught at least 2 balls and made it at least 30 yards.
No, really? Like 2 for 11 was one of the receivers.
Oh dear.
Like 2 yards, 2 receptions.
Oh, because if it's only 11 yards, but you get 2 catches.
Exactly.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so he only narrowly beat out Robbie Chosen, who only had 1 catch for 5 yards in the Bills game. And he only beat out Robbie Chosen by like half a point, really, which is very telling about the Bryce Young experience. I don't want to. I don't
want to turn this into too much bullying, because I think we're going to bully the Carolina Panthers enough this year, whether or not we want to. So I'm going to frame this as: did you learn anything about the Panthers?
That's what I learned. That he's Mo Alley-Cox level. That's what I learned today. Is that he's like Tutu Atwell level.
I mean, we both praised, in big air quotes, praised this team and their offseason, which on paper seemed good. But they got their first down of the game with 3 minutes left in the first half.
I do have a question.
Yeah.
Do you think Bryce Young or Tua retires first?
Oh, that's so mean. I resent this. That's so mean.
Come on, like that's a real question. This is a real question. The Bama quarterbacks, bro.
I'm gonna stick to what's on my my agenda, and I'm gonna move to another nasty game. Nasty to most of us, but I guess this is positive for at least one team. In the NFC East, we had a good early season showdown, or an early season showdown to be more accurate. Commanders and Jane Daniels got their first win of the season, 21-18 over the Giants. What was your takeaway from this game?
There is life in the Jane Daniels investment. That last drive, more particularly, like that game, I caught the end of, and it just like it looked rough looking back on the early part of it, but that last drive from Jane Daniels was actually pretty good.
Yeah.
Once he learns how to like more effectively get the ball to a wide receiver, um, he'll probably look great. But just in terms of just like pure like raw attributes, he looked good in that last drive. Had a good feel for the game, knew how to
Mhm.
scramble out of Giants pressure. There's spark there in a way that it's looking a little dire on that quarterback class so far this year.
Mhm.
But there's something there, and I think later in the season it'll be interesting to see if he expands upon that.
Yeah, there's the one play on that last drive that sticks out to me is they're lined up in the gun, and I think they run uh, it's a design QB run, but I forget how the blocking worked out. But he fakes a handoff, and then he just goes up the right side, kind of like in a wheel route almost.
Yeah,
And that one gave me real big Lamar vibes. Like he just looks really confident, which I know is very trite to say about rookies. But I think with Daniels, we've said it here, and I think most people agree that he was always going to be a project for this year. But he's more pro ready than expected, and I think he's one of the QBs. We're still learning, or we're still seeing how this works out. QBs who play 3 to 4 years, QBs who go through the transfer portal. But I think I know this is something you're really big about with us, especially with quarterbacks like these guys who you think you've already seen their ceiling because they played so much in college. But I think Daniels can be an example of the positive of what we see with guys who do play more football, and thus they're more pro ready in the sense that one quite literally they just have played more football, but one they've seen more defenses, especially for a guy who played in the SEC. So that experience is much more valuable than almost any other conference in college
the
football.
the inverse of Bo Nix, basically. Couldn't hack it in the SEC. Moved over to Oregon.
But I did write one thing down for the Commanders, which was invest as much capital as possible into this offensive line next season. Because
Yeah,
yeah, he did
it'll.
have a pretty respectable line. He finished 23 for 29 with 226 yards. He did finish with 5 sacks, which I think at least maybe two were his fault. But yeah, he looks a lot better than I thought he would. I also want to shout out Brian Robinson. He did have 17 rushes for 133 yards. So they've
Yeah,
got they've got
he
some
was
juice with
he
this
was pretty
skill group.
strong.
Yeah.
He's certainly trying to target Terry McLaurin, but like it's not very fruitful. Only like 22 yards is what I gathered there,
Yeah.
which is rough because he's like you want him for that sort of big boom potential. At least that's what you got him on that. I think he's on the left slot.
Yeah, I don't want to dwell on the Commanders too much. Like, I think Zach Ertz was their leading receiver yesterday, which is one of those. Depends on how you spin it, but is good that he's finding connection with somebody early on because yeah, both McLaurin and De'Ami Brown haven't had great statistical starts to the season, but yeah, I did write one thing down for the Giants, which is kickers are people too, Caleb. It might surprise you, but kickers are people too. If listeners did not watch this game, the Giants lost Graham Gano to injury on the opening kickoff, so they were essentially forced to go for it on fourth down at almost every opportunity in in Commanders territory. So Jamie Gillen, the punter, missed their first PAT, and then they proceeded to go over 2 on the next 2 2-point conversions. I think I saw a stat that said the Giants are the first team in history. It just sounds right. They
Yep,
scored 3 touchdowns. They did not let up a touchdown, and they still
and they
lost.
still lost.
Which is
No field goals, no
no.
nothing.
Gosh, congratulations to all the Austern Sabert owners who capitalized with 7 field goals. 7 field goals, crazy. All right, next game on the docket. Now this was the shock. This was the first shock of the day, of which we had a. I feel like we had a solid amount of exciting football. The Saints march into Dallas and they win 44-19. I will start because I can empathize with Saints fans. I wrote down one thing. they need to hire Pete Carmichael and fire him again. They need to restore. They need to bottle this feeling and keep it with them in their heart of hearts for the rest of the season.
I need some alcohol or something. Pour one out for that bum.
But yeah, this was we were both very low on the Saints just because it's based on maybe we were putting too much stock in last season. But
I feel
yeah,
like we didn't pay attention to the fact that they fired Pete.
they fired Pete Carmichael. Yeah, no, I will.
That completely went over. I was like, they bringing back Pete Carmichael, aren't they?
I will put my hand up and say I did not realize that the Clint Kubiak signing went really under the radar. For those unaware, Clint Kubiak was the pass game coordinator for the Niners last season, and so I will say I think this is one of those inherent good, like objective net good, not having Pete Carmichael run your offense in 2024.
Yes,
but yeah, Kubiak after 2 weeks is he is looking like this season's Ben Johnson from the last 2 years / Bobby Slow from last year. Like he's going to get calls this offseason if they're even 60, not even like half as good as this offense has been the first 2 weeks. Because yeah, let me read you some crazy stat lines. Derek Carr only went 11 for 16 with 243 yards.
That's an average of 22 yards a throw, which is ridiculous.
2 touchdowns and 1 interception. He went full Madden mode. And then Alvin Kamara, which I think was the bigger surprise. He really turned back the clock. He's really turning back the clock right now. He had 20 rushes for 115 yards. That's 3 rushing touchdowns. And then in the air, he had 2 catches for 65 yards and 1 touchdown.
In fairness, one of those passes was like a big 30-yard breakaway, roughly. One of those stupid flats that Derek Carr likes to do.
Yeah, Kubiak is they're cooking some fun stuff up in New Orleans. Last week I referenced last week it felt comedic, and this week it feels unique. I don't know how else to describe it, but I did ironically reference a play or screenshot where Taysom Hill was in the backfield and Alvin Kamara was wideouts. So I paid a little more attention to the Saints game, even like regardless of the scoreline. And yeah, they're cooking up some fun stuff with unorthodox personnel usage, especially like loading the backfield. Like they're running like full house sometimes, or like they're running a lot of like 2 guys in the backfield, like strong or weak side, motioning a lot of guys side to side. Yeah, this will be a fun team to watch. Now they've started the season 2-0, and they've put themselves in, I'm going to say, very solid playoff contention.
Yes, yeah. I mean, I had him as a standalone shout out later, but I can sort of open up that can of worms just briefly. It's pretty jarring to see like the difference between last year's Derek Carr and this year's Derek Carr. And it's really just a matter of like, are we actually running an offense or not? Or are we going to rely on this guy as Drew Brees tax for a decade plus? It's a miracle. And like, not only that, but it opened up the game for Chris Olave, which it seemed like it was another doomed year for him just off of the last game where it was like, okay, like we're only going to go the Shaheed route. But now he's getting those deep bomb threats, which is what you have him for. Yeah, and I mean, again, like their defense is pretty strong too. I want to mention that as well. It's a lot of older guys, but they always got like a ton of fire to them. I think Demario Davis is like 34.
Yeah, he's up there.
Honey Badger's been doing this for a decade at this point, and he's still like maybe the strongest safety that I can think of off the top of my head. It's the reason why he's like a relatively untouchable despite the money that he's bringing in. Just a really strong team, and honestly, like I could see them winning the division if things
not out of the question. Absolutely not. Yeah,
because I think the Bucs have a pretty strong schedule this year in terms of competition
because they play the first place schedule. Yeah.
Yeah. So they got a stronger schedule this year. And the Falcons, they have a weak schedule, but they also look like crap. So like, I don't know.
Clint Kubiak and the Saints, man, they are cooking up. On the Cowboys side, I don't really have a lot for them, really. Like, I wrote one thing, which is don't look at social media. And honestly, like, just keep going. Like, I know that's funny to say, and I'm really not trying to give them the benefit of the doubt, but at the same time, I am because just like I don't know, man. I think this is one of those. If the Saints could have played anybody like this, and they would have beat anybody. I mean, Dak still had a pretty solid game, 27 of 39 for 293 yards. He did throw two picks. I think I did learn one thing from this game, which is they desperately need help in the run game, and I know they two or three pieces on their offensive line did change this year, uh, namely I'm forgetting off the top of my head. I should remember, but I know it's center. I actually didn't pay attention to this if Cooper Beebe started, but yeah, I think the easiest way was they just need to upgrade from Rico Dowdle and Zeke Elliott, because yeah, I think this offense like did what it could, having to play from behind too. But yeah,
You're gonna get that Dalvin Cook signing, and you're gonna be
oh
happy
man,
about it.
well,
Yeah, I didn't feel very strongly, but the Cowboys just seem like they're always the victim of these like random breakout games, where it's like the next year they end up being like top tier in the league, or they end up being like super fiery. Like it was the Cardinals last year that they bombed a game against, and I was just like, hey, I thought you were contenders, and then we spin the cycle over and over where we have hope, and then we try and be like squeamish after the Cowboys thing, and then we end up right back in the middle where they usually are.
yeah, but yeah, weird game, fun game, weird game. All right, let's try to keep it rolling. Let's try to keep it tight. This was a bit of a shock, but not so much so. At least not for me. Raiders 26, Ravens 23. Um, I have just two quick things. Raiders just keep being physical. Mitchell does look better than I thought he would, just because I'm so sorry. I keep forgetting who the Raiders OC is right now, but I like how they're using the quick game to establish rhythm. And Minshew, underrated thing with him is he uses every part of the field, like outside the numbers, down the middle. And so I think this, especially with the skill group, which is I think is very underrated. Yeah, this offense looks pretty good, and yeah, the defense continues to be physical. Uh, for the Ravens, I felt kind of nasty writing this, especially given my personal circumstances. I said, Greg Roman is gone, but his spirit lives on. Yeah, I don't know. This team is just really weird because I still think this team is really talented, but I think after 2 weeks, this offense is going to be really boom or bust. But I don't think they are consistent enough to control games, whether that's like play sequencing, like the reliance on the run, or whether Lamar needs to take more control with the pass game. But maybe they're not as talented as we thought they were, slash, they are not talented enough to just bulldoze teams. So, yeah, this was a weird game.
I told you, man. That's the Houston Rockets D'Antoni era, where Lamar is James Harden and Dwight Howard is Mark Andrews. Real gross team that'll thrive within the regular season, but it's just like I feel like there's not much else you can really do with it unless you
Mhm.
finally plan on giving that man the weapons that he's desperately been asking for.
It
Like
is true, yeah.
at some point, like having two tight ends just isn't going to cut it, and like because no team is running a double tight end set that's going to win the Super Bowl. That's just not how you can't be so one note and in that regard on offense. To your point on the Raiders offense, I don't love it.
Yeah.
I don't love it. They're
Well, let me be clear. I don't love it, but they are doing the right things. They are thinking the right things. Like if you watch their offense, they are thinking the right things and they are executing well, which is this is a funny thing to say, but I think there's a big problem in the NFL right now with disagreement, whether it's actually said out loud or not, between the talent that's on the field and the way it's coached. Like, I guess we'll just go back to Pete Carmichael and the Saints, which is the Saints, and well, Clinton Kubiak understands Derek Carr isn't the best processor, and he doesn't make the best decisions. What should we do? Let's let him make as little decisions as possible. Let him bomb downfield. And yeah, the offense immediately looks better. I'm sure it'll look bad at some point this season, but it's clear there is a lot more vision in that offense. And so the Raiders, great example of doing that to a much less exciting level. But yeah, they have a guy in Gardner Minshew who is can make he doesn't necessarily make bad decisions, but you when they play from behind, he's a quarterback who will try to play a little hero ball, and he's going to throw into that double coverage or something, and he just doesn't have the arm. But yeah, he's an NFL quarterback. You know what I mean?
Real thumbs in the middle, and we both agreed on that. And I mean,
Yeah,
they've got a thumbs in the middle type of offensive coordinator too. Luke Getzey,
it was Luke
who
Getz.
was
Yes,
who was doing the Bears last
Bears.
year,
So yes,
which
yes.
is which they credit a lot of DJ Moore's like expansion within the Bears offense to him, and
To Getzey. Yeah,
and they credit some of the reason
yeah,
why
and it
people
makes
won't give up
sense
on Justin Fields.
in Chicago you had DJ Moore, and then you have Cole Kmet, and then here in Oak and I almost said Oakland, Las Vegas, you have Devontae Adams and Brock Bowers. Bowers looks really good. We're starting to see the flashes of his talent from Georgia, but yeah,
Yeah, the one thing that I did notice is that like again, I keep emphasizing this team does like give a shit, which is why it doesn't surprise me that they beat a team like the Ravens, where it's just like yeah they're stacked up on the front end, where Derrick Henry's going to struggle in the first half against Crosby and Wilkins, who I forget when it was throughout the game, but Wilkins effectively like leaps over Crosby to make a play, which was super
yeah,
tight. Yeah, and then I saw this moment where like Matt Crosby like consoled Gardner Minshew for like
yeah. I sent you that.
throwing a stupid football, and I was like, yeah, that like that says a lot because any other
It's those little things that we as outsiders or people who are not on the inside, just watching from the outside in, we take those kind of things for granted. Like some people find that to be trite, but no, I mean, I
those
feel
things do matter.
especially if you've never been in a setting like that, it
Yeah,
matters to like not just because the cameras are watching. It matters to just even be willing to take a guy by the neck, kind of, and just go like, "Hey, it's okay.
yeah,
We're a team," kind of thing.
yeah. It's sort of the opposite of, and we'll get to that game, but it's sort of the opposite effect of what happened with Will Levis on Sunday.
We'll definitely get them. All right, we got two more games I want to go through before we go long on our first game. Our first game we go long on. This one I think we can keep it pretty tight. Packers 16, Colts 10. Colts, I'll just say temper your expectations, but continue to let Anthony Richardson cook. We both agree on this. I did write down, I think he should watch some Josh Allen tape. I think that is a perfect example of a guy who Supermans, but does not lose you the game every week, which is kind of where Anthony Richardson is right now.
Yeah,
Um, for the Packers, I wrote down that GM Brian Gutekunst came last in his fantasy league last year, and that's the only explanation because there is no way he seriously thought trading for Malik Willis was a good idea. That had to have been his punishment for finishing last. I don't know.
my main takeaway is that I think we won't see Josh Jacobs play football anymore after next year if this is the rate that they're going to if that's the rate that they're going to play him. 32 rushes, 150 yards.
151 yards.
They are trying to break his back out there.
So yeah, Josh Jacobs had 32 touches. There were 7 different rushers for the Packers this game,
bro,
Willis
that's what I'm
included.
saying. Willis had a third of 40 yards were his rushing and 122. That's a third of his offensive production.
Matt LaFleur is a magician, man.
That's a nice way of putting it. Yo, this motherfucker can't throw the ball, bro. God damn.
Oh man. All right, and then the one more game, which was I thought this was kind of surprising, but I did tell you this. Yeah, there were a few media people who thought this would be a good game. I wish I could shout them out, but yeah, shout out to whoever had this one coming. Niners lose to the Vikings in Minnesota 23-17. What did you learn from this game?
It's weird because it didn't take much of anything away. I just had a whole bunch of I had a whole bunch of question marks because I was like the 49ers didn't have like a awful game.
No, they
It's
did
just
not. Yeah, this
it's
is a
just the
funny game. Yeah.
it's just the Vikings had a fantastic defensive scheme against them. They were just like, yeah, no, we're just gonna keep you from the end zone. But like for all intents and purposes, like the 49ers did what the 49ers usually do. It's just Brian
They
Flores
moved
and
the
the crew.
ball really well, like really, really well. Brock
And that
Purdy finished 28 for 36 with 319 yards. He did throw a touchdown. He was sacked 6 times to your reference, which is,
yeah.
shout out to Brian Flores, who continues to be one of the best football perverts in the league. But yeah.
I guess what I learned is that they were very smart to invest so much in the Blake Cashman signing, who had
Yeah.
like 13 tackles that
He was
game and like
awesome this game, yeah.
3 tackles for loss off the top of my head. But yeah, like it's very obvious. I thought it was gonna. I didn't think it was gonna matter when the Texans lost him. I was like, okay, like they got this season, like maybe it's not gonna. Maybe it's not
that
gonna.
was Blake Cashman getting downhill against
Literally,
this Niners offense. No, literally, he was everywhere. Yeah.
I wasn't sure how much it was going to matter for the Texans losing out on him because he was a pretty big part of that linebacker room last year when I was watching so much of the Texans. I wasn't sure how much of a difference it was going to make since they got Aziz, and I felt it was kind of lateral. But I do think that Blake Cashman is, one of the better premier linebackers in the league that is certainly starving for that sort of coverage.
I had one thing for both teams, which is the Niners. I think they need to figure out how to play against the blitz, and that's not necessarily just on Purdy. This was an issue for him last year too. But yeah, like we said, the Vikings, especially in a Brian Flores defense, we knew they were going to send it a lot, and they did, and they dared the Niners to do something about it. But it was funny because, like we said, yeah, they moved the ball really well, but the Vikings front seven came up. I don't want to say clutch. That's not quite the right word. But the Niners continued to move the ball well, but they got good stops and forced punts that kept the Niners from building consistent rhythm over drives.
Yeah.
Like they didn't score on back-to-back drives at all in this game, which was impressive given how dominant they were in week 1.
Yeah, I saw footage after the game when Brock Purdy went up to when he went up to Flores and he was like, "Bro, that was a hell of a scheme." Like that kind of let me know like he was kind of shook dealing with Brian Flores' defense the whole time. He couldn't really get comfortable, and I mean, I don't know. I want to make a note of this because we're seeing, just to reference back to the Saints, we're seeing how much of a difference it is for the Saints offense to get Clint Kubiak. I do want to just see if there's a pretty glaring difference in how their offense operates. The 49ers, I mean, with and without Kubiak, see what the subtle differences are that's, causing them to have these weird momentum hiccups.
Yeah, that's a good shout out. I actually don't know who the past game coordinator is this season that replaced Kubiak. But yeah, it's a good one. Oh, and then don't want to forget them for the Vikings. I learned one thing, which is Sam Darnold might be the current front runner for comeback player of the year. I'd say he had a really great game. 17 of 26, 268 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 1 pick. I mentioned this with Minshew, but obviously Darnold has a better arm. But his willingness to use the entire field makes him, I talk about this all the time because this is a big thing with this is just the first guy I thought about Sunday. This is a big thing with me and Jalen Hurts, which is he's not great at using the middle of the field. But yeah, Darnold looked really great. Has looked really great the first 2 weeks. And his ability to play on time, which I think he looked really good after those few backup games he had for the Niners last season, ironically. Yeah, he's got a real career second win here. I think he looks really good. I cannot lie. If you give him an offensive line, yeah, I don't think he's quite Geno level, but I think he's quite good, and I think I'm willing to project for the rest of the season that he is going to earn himself a job, whether it's here or somewhere else.
Next Raiders quarterback.
Ooh, wow, that's really testing the limits of both Sam Darnold and the Raiders.
Well, that's what
I kind of like it. The vibes don't align, but the quarterbacking does.
No, but I just keep thinking about how the Raiders operate in spirit. Like that's a Raiders ass move,
I mean,
because they just did it with Minshew.
I was just about to. So if Gardner Minshew can quarterback the Raiders, I think Sam Darnold can quarterback the Raiders.
Yeah, which
That's
is
fair.
like it. Really, they could just use just about anybody that's not Aiden O'Connell out there.
All right. So we finally made it to our first game that we'd like to go long on. This was this I the scoreline doesn't reflect it, but I thought this was a fun game to watch. Bears-Texans Sunday Night Football, and the Texans I think handled this game. It wasn't always comfortable. It was a little nasty at times, but
Yeah.
they handled this game 19-13. Um, I just want to start by saying one thing: these defense played their fucking asses off. This was, if you're a defensive guy, actually, you should watch the highlights for this game. This was
Yeah.
so much fun.
I
There were
want,
guys from both teams were just flying downhill, like not just in the box, but secondary guys were just absolutely wrapping guys up.
I'm curious if you saved the same stat that I saved that I came across after the game. So Daniil Hunter and Will Anderson combined for 17 pressures on Caleb Williams
Mhm.
out of the 36 overall on Caleb Williams. So the Texans got 36, and
36,
just the
and
two
yeah,
of them
just the two of
combined for
them.
half of that. And that's 36 pressures on 37 pass attempts.
Dude.
That is so, and that's where this is where I got a little uncertain because I wasn't sure how much this said about the Texans defense versus how much this said about the Bears offensive line. And I'm somewhere towards the middle on both, where I think this Texans defense is fucking dangerous.
No, I think I think both things can be true here. Yeah, the
I
Bears
mean,
line needs to be better, but I don't know, man. This defense at every level, like no, not just the line, which yeah, Hunter and Anderson were awesome. Before I forget it, like we should just shout out Anderson. I think has a pretty good chance at Defensive Player of the Year.
yeah.
Games like this, like he took over. Yeah.
So I want to note in specifically, and this is where I started to lean towards, yeah, this Texans defense is just that special. I remember that play when Caleb Williams lobbed up that throw to DJ Moore, and I've seen DJ Moore do this shit 1,000 times where he'll like fake the fuck out of a corner and then break away for a big play. I've seen him do it 12 times at this point. Derek Stingley stays with him the whole time and picks his shit. I've seen DJ Moore burn so many corners that way, and he just couldn't shake Derek Stingley that whole route.
No, he was.
So I
Yeah,
was
Stingley.
just like, why are you throwing to that man if he's not terrified of one of the 10 best receivers in the league? So I mean, you're going to get to a point where like, imagine the Chiefs go up against the Texans, and you're going to try and throw out that stupid Worthy guy at him. You're gonna throw Xavier Worthy at him, who's just gonna run that fast ass streak. Stingley's gonna take that shit 9 times out of 10, which is gonna be very interesting to see how teams are gonna scheme against that secondary.
Yeah, I think to a broader point, I think the past. This has always been a thing in the NFL, but especially the past 4, maybe even 5-ish years, especially with the cap exponentially increasing every year. I think we have, rightfully, like you want to get excited about it, but I mean, I'm referencing in the off season when you have these big moves, whether it's offense or defense, you guys get picked up in free agency or you trade for somebody and you think you're filling a gap, and this doesn't always like come together, like not immediately at least. This Texans defense, yeah, just because at every level, I think the Daniil Hunter and Azeez Al-Shaair signings have really unlocked this entire defense.
Yeah,
because we've been talking about Anderson and Hunter, who are both elite in their own right. And you mentioned Stingley, Kamari Lassiter, who they drafted this year, both looked really great too. And so having him as your CB2 I don't know how far I'm willing to go, but it's kind of giving L'Jarius Sneed unlocking Trent McDuffie last year. And then we'll talk about the Chiefs later, obviously, but McDuffie, at least through the first 2 weeks of the season, has continued to look elite. And so, that's something to monitor with this Houston secondary. Jalen Petrie. I don't know why I hadn't thought about this before until last night, but I realized he's like the Anthony Richardson of defense. Like, there's some games where he's locking guys up and he gets like 10 tackles, and there's some games where guys are just blowing by him. But yes, he looked really great in this game, really physical. He had 8 tackles, with second most on the team. And then we brought up Blake Cashman, who was great for this Texans team last year. But another guy who I thought was really underrated on this team last year was Henry To'oTo'o, who was also part of that linebacker room. Yeah. But he's looked a lot better these first 2 weeks with what looks like less responsibility, mostly because they don't have to set. He's not responsible for like sending pressure really, because the Texans had the luxury, which is the Chiefs have had this luxury for the past 2 years with Chris Jones being as great as he is, which is you can get pressure off without sending 5-6 guys. And so that's where the Texans are right now, because if you have Hunter, Anderson, and who's on the inside, Mario Edwards.
Yes.
Yeah, those guys are going to get pressure.
Another great.
Yeah, Edwards was really great last night too, but yeah, those guys are going to get pressures on their own. And so with To'oTo'o, he looks really great getting downhill, like just staying in the box in those like hook, low hole, flat zones in the middle of the field. And yeah,
I want to note that this is his second year, so I think this is more. Yes. I do want to note that this is probably more of just a pure improvement at that rate, because Blake Cashman. Blake Cashman was most of the reason why that linebacker room wasn't like putrid last year.
Yes.
So I mean, again, you slot in somebody that's comparable like Azeez, and you put in the natural progression of Henry, and I think you just have it just gets stronger the more you keep adding to it. The Texans draft really well.
They have been drafting really well the past 3 years. Yeah. I do want to talk about their offense a little. Are C.J. Stroud and Nico Collins the best quarterback wide receiver duo in the league right now?
Not to think about it too much, probably.
They might be, just like right now, like today.
Like not thinking about it too much, because C.J. Stroud is better than Jalen Hurts, and I think that goes without saying.
Quiet hater mode just turned on right now.
The real question is, do you feel more strongly about A.J. Brown than you do Nico Collins?
Yeah,
and that's sort of the glaring. That's the only one that came to mind, unless you really fucking feel great about Tua. And Tyreek Hill, which really feels more of like a Tyreek Hill emphasis than anything.
With all due respectfully,
if we're talking like a even sort of feel,
yes.
Stroud and Nico Collins are fucking magic together. I don't know if you saw that. I don't know if you read that article about C.J. Stroud over the offseason where he was like locking in with Nico Collins over the offseason, and Stroud was like obsessing over different like scheme things that different coaches and quarterbacks would do. He was looking at the Chiefs.
I think I know what you're talking about,
but particularly he was looking at Julio Jones footage, and he was sending it over.
Yeah. This is really yes. I've heard
things, and I was like, oh shit! Like, and I think about it. Nico Collins is like, I mirror my game after Julio, and I'm watching him do like these very specific. This is somebody who grew up watching Julio at Bama. I'm watching him do all those actions that Julio would do, and it's just like I started getting like insane flashbacks, and I think like C.J. Stroud's ceiling sort of approaches past the Matt Ryan level, if that's where we're going with it. So it's a lot of.
No, it's a really great comp.
Tank Dell is a slot guy. Stephon Diggs is your wide receiver too. Like, I mean,
we haven't even mentioned Diggs, and Diggs he hasn't had a great statistical start to the season, but I think I said this in the preseason. He doesn't have to be great. He barely has to be good for this team. Is what we're learning, because Nico Collins just is that guy.
And they got other wide receivers that they could pull in on a moment's notice. I think they had Xavier Hutchinson randomly at some point during the game. You got Tank Dell in the slot. They used him a lot for like really weird coverages last game, which is why he had like -3 yards. But really, it was a whole lot of like interesting trickery. You still got Dalton Schultz up there, who is top 5 to 10 tight ends in the league. There's not a shortage of options for Stroud to get into. More than anything, I was just more surprised to see how like the little ways that Mixon opened up the game for him as a Mixon skeptic.
Yeah, I'm also not a huge Joe Mixon fan, but I think we said this before that at the very least he's an upgrade on Devin Singletary, and so the ability to run the ball more has also opened up this offense for Bobby Slowick.
Yeah,
Um, I did want to, I wanted to go full nerd just for a second. I want to shout out Cade Stover, who's the backup tight end, but there's a great sequence, I think, in the second or third quarter where they're faced with a fourth and short, and so they line up in the eye, and then they go play act. Stover is the fullback in this play, and then they go play action, and they hit him in the flat for an easy conversion. And then the very next play, I think Stover's lined up in 12 personnel as a tight end, and he's an outside blocker on a Tank Dell reverse jet sweep. Like, I love when teams just, I don't know how to say it. I love when teams know what they're doing, man.
yeah,
Like, it's so great to see that attention to detail. But I think Slowick, this is a big thing with me with Slowick calling the offense last year, which is I think it was both things where Devin Singletary was not very good, and also Slowick. I'm not sure how to put this. It's not stubbornness because you need to be able to run the ball. Even if you don't actually run the ball, you need the defense to respect your ability to run the ball.
yeah.
But they just they continue to call run plays while Singletary was racking up like an average of 3 yards a carry. But I think so with Mixon, and then I think with more creative play calling, like what they were showing last night. Yeah, they are more in control of games, which I think was a problem for them last year. And then, but also, look, I'll put my hands up and say, obviously, CJ Stroud, amazing quarterback, and I thought maybe this season would be him taking a step into the top 5, but I think for people who still haven't watched a lot of Texans football, you really need to watch it because this guy is special. He is so special. Like he's, he's a second year guy, and he just looks like so confident. Like it's because he's arguably my favorite quarterback of all time. Like I always mention Stafford, who
Mm.
Stroud has mentioned as like what is literally one of his heroes. Yeah, he goes
You
through his
noticed a
Stroud. I
lot.
mean, Stroud goes through his reads so quickly, so efficiently. He's got strong footwork, and obviously he has an arm. Like, yeah. If
There
you've
was
not watched a lot of
there,
Texans football, please do.
there was one play where he goes like cross body that like definitely rubbed me like peak Detroit, relatively speaking. They lost a fuck ton of games, but peak Detroit Matt Stafford,
Stafford.
where he's doing like these absurd Hercules ass throws where he's throwing
Mm-hmm.
across bodies to usually Calvin Johnson. And
Yeah.
that's kind of what it feels like. Imagine if Matt Stafford had like an offense for his, prime physical years anyway. I did have a brief question before we move on. We mentioned Joe Mixon and how he affects the offensive side of the ball. Um, what do you think changes if they go with Saquon like how they were originally interested?
That's interesting. I think I don't want to dwell on this too much, but Saquon it gives you a better receiving option out of the backfield, which is those. It's funny because I always complain about this when I'm talking about quick games specifically, which I don't think enough offenses in the league utilize, like especially to mitigate bad run games. Which is instead of stubbornly going up the gut and only getting 2 yards, you can run a flat, and if your receivers are good at blocking, or then you get 5 yards. It's just one of those little things where instead of putting yourself at third and long, like 5 or 3 to 8 times a game, you're giving yourself third and 5, or you know what I mean.
Third and two type
Yeah,
situations where
and
it's like you can
that is
convert
just
those a lot easier.
that is infinitely better for the tempo of your offense throughout the course of a game. And so I think that's as simple as like this Yeah, Saquon would just make the run game better, but the money with this team is the pass game. So I know we've given Houston a lot of love. I do want to talk about the Bears just for a moment. Caleb looked better than he did in week one. I would like for him to move his feet a little more. Ironically, I think Stroud's a good guy to watch for that. Um, I'm not smart enough to think about this more, but I don't know if this is like a processing thing or if it's like a scheme thing. The footwork, especially. But I do want to shout out. First half, he looked really great playing in structure. He had a 100% completion rate on quick game, like literally passes 3 seconds or less. I think that was like I didn't write it down, but it was like 8 for 8, maybe, for like around 60, 70 yards. In the second half, when they were playing from behind, he tried to create more, and it just did not work. Um, yeah, I don't know. I think we've all been a little humbled in the sense that we were excited to see Caleb and especially this offense, which is a lot of people. This is the best situation a first overall pick has ever been in, which I think is still true.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, it's like we've mentioned in tidbits throughout this episode, which is he is a rookie, and this is a new offense, and these are new guys who haven't played together before. So I think ultimately they'll be fine. And like we've mentioned, like we don't expect them to blow the doors off in year one.
They're still feeling it out. I
They're
mean,
still feeling it out.
this is natural rookie quarterback stuff where he's still feeling it. I mean, he's coming from USC. He's coming from a school that is kind of whatever. I don't know. It's fine. He'll be fine. I'm more curious where he's at by the bye week more than anything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I did write 2 notes down for them because DeAndre Swift did not look good in this game, which is I think I'm willing to chalk up to the Texans' defense was just that good.
Sure.
But I think it'll be a lot more comfortable for Caleb if the run game is way more sound so that they'll be able to use more play action stuff or that'll open up the long game. And also this offense, it's only been 2 weeks, but it's very clear this offense really needs Keenan Allen. Like they need that safe guy who keeps the offense in a rhythm and gets those little checkdowns and also gets those like big first downs. Yeah.
It's not great that he's like fat and out of shape. Real Scott Steiner vibes there, but like it doesn't help that he's kind of built like that. And it probably reflects why he seemed so like sluggish and why he's probably out right now. It's like his body's still kind of adjusting to the football season. So his heel will probably act up. And then he's also like 32, 33.
He's I think he's around 32.
Yeah, so like I mean, this is usually around the ballpark where you start to see guys like Keenan start to slow down a little bit, even though he's not like he's never been known to be like a super speed demon. He's never been one of those like super long. He's always just been like really good at everything sort of thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's just natural for him at this rate. Again, it's another thing where I think we'll see with time how it treats him within the offense if he's going to continue to be slow like that and this is just who he is versus whether this is just a week 2 stumble.
All right. Well, we've got 7 more games to go through. I'd like to see if we can challenge ourselves to go rapid fire ish through these, and then obviously we got one big game to get through. Browns 18, Jaguars 13. I didn't really learn a lot from this game.
The Jaguars suck so bad. Get them out of here. Doug Peterson, you are out of here, my boy.
Yeah, I didn't learn anything about the Browns. Like literally, the defense was good again. The offense was bad again.
Trevor, just quickly, this strikes me as a Bill Belichick project next year.
Oh wow. It's interesting, but I think
the Bengals eventually, we'll get to the Bengals, but I think they eventually stumble their way into like a Mike Vrabel type situation.
That's interesting, actually, Belichick for this Jags team, because it kind of lines up with his strengths, which is, this offensive line is still a huge worry.
Yeah.
And then also the defense has been scrappy, and, they're doing what they can with how like inconsistent this offense has been, those are really his calling cards.
There's no
So
identity on that defense, I think, is the big thing. And one thing you'll know from Belichick is you've got an identity on that defensive side of the ball.
yeah, it's a talented defense, but it's not like I forget if Campbell was injured because he was injured last week, so I don't know if he played this game. And also they have Josh Hines Allen, who's still one of the best pass rushers in the league. But it's not, it's very abstract, but it doesn't feel like Josh Allen is the leader of this pass rush and then leaks into the rest of the defense, or like Tyson Campbell is our lockdown corner, and it doesn't feel that way.
I felt that way about the Saints last year, where it's like there's clearly a bunch of personnel there, but like there's no like strong feeling that you get from that defense.
One bright spot for the Jaguars, which is Brian Thomas Jr. has looked really good. He only had 2 catches on Sunday, but it was for 94 yards. He's a lot more NFL ready than I thought he would be. But at least there's one bright spot for Jags fans.
Yeah.
Another scrappy game. Seahawks 23, Patriots 20. I learned one thing about the Patriots, and it's that I am really excited to watch Drake May play. That's not so much a shot at Jacoby Brissett, who obviously we know is limited, but shout out.
Real thumbs in the middle.
Real thumbs in the middle. But yeah, this run game has looked really good 2 weeks in. Antonio Gibson had 96 yards on 11 touches. Ramondre Stevenson continues to be like the most underrated back in the league. 21 rushes for 81 yards, 1 touchdown.
4 yards a carry, but he did take that thing 20 times. So
I think they've got a good balance with those two guys. And then I think it's interesting because even without a clear WR1, I think there is enough structure in place for this to be not necessarily a good offense, but at least an interesting offense with May under center, because it plays to his strengths to have, 1, a good run game, and then 2, to play under center and in rhythm, because that's kind of just what these guys are doing. They're it's very much go through the motions.
See, I don't know if this is the right game for you to highlight that with, considering that Hunter Henry has 109
yards, man. Hunter Henry turning back the clock.
He has, that's gross. Only 40 yards go to the wide receivers, which is gross.
And the Seahawks, I already felt this way before, but I guess it's an affirmation. Geno Smith is still a top quarterback in this league, man. I think this is probably one of the best games he has ever played, because he looked awesome in this game.
You know why I don't feel like strongly about them? They remind me a lot of like that Oladipo Sabonis era Pacers team, where it's just like, yeah, they're like good, but are they like good?
Are they playoffs good? That will remain to be seen. I mean, this O-line is still...
Like, how strongly am I going to feel about them in December type of deal?
But, this offensive line, I'll just say this. If this offensive line holds up, the NFC West is going to be a bloodbath. Like, it's already looking like it will be, because, yeah.
Yeah.
Geno Smith, 33 for 44, 327 yards, 1 touchdown. He still ain't right back. That's crazy. All right. In a game I was surprised by just a little. Jets go to Tennessee, and they have to grind out a win, 24-17. Where would you like to start here?
This is Aaron Rodgers' first 2 games in like forever, so I do feel like he's playing like scaredy cat football, but they don't look great. I don't feel like amazing about it. I think more than anything, I came away looking at Will Levis like more with like concern more than anything, which kind of reflects how the coaching staff looked on camera. They're like they aren't like mad at him. They're just like
confused. You sent me that video of like, Brian Callahan literally taking his headset off, and he said, "What the hell are you doing? What are you doing?"
He's not even mad at him. He's just like, bro, like, we did not go over this in practice. What are you doing?
I think we're in agreement here. I had basically the same 2 things. I know it's early, but yeah, just even talent-wise, I don't think Will Levis is the future of this franchise. But for what it's worth, it was worth finding out.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think it's. I don't mean to be so cut and dry, but I just don't see. I don't see enough foundationally that if he improves, that he will be not just an NFL starter, but like, will he be a good NFL starter? But
Yeah.
yeah, I think he's just way too shaky. He gives me boomer bust backup quarterback.
Well, that's what he was in college, to be fair.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, playing at Kentucky,
Right. Like
playing in a strong conference, but
they were
at
kind of
a
deliberating between him and another quarterback, but because his raw talent like saw him rise above in Kentucky, that sort of swings how it goes. More than anything, I guess with the Jets, if Aaron Rodgers can even remotely like just get into game manager mode, if he decides to like go full magical Aaron Rodgers mode, then this team can go as far as they want. But just pure game manager vibes, I think they can beat first or second in their division pretty easily, especially if the
so
Dolphins are going to fall apart like they are.
so last week when we did overreactions, obviously my hot take was I don't think the Jets will make the playoffs. Obviously, the Tua injury I think will have a big say in that in terms of just interdivision. But I don't know, man. I wrote down one question for the Jets after this game: is this team as good as we thought they were?
Mm.
Because I'll put my hand up and say, like, yeah, I was focused a lot on the abstract and there's a lot of locker room stuff when I gave that take. But yeah, I'm just not sure this team is as good as we thought they were. After Garrett Wilson, this skill group needs to be significantly better. Like,
Yeah,
even Mike Williams did not play, but even with a healthy Mike Williams, I kind of don't like how his skill set fits into this team.
yeah, yeah. Again, it just like it feels like I'm watching a team that's still like having their leader like slowly come into form.
Yeah, it's true. It is true. Yeah. Um, realistically, I think one pointed thing about it is I think their success will rely on how great Brees Hall and Braylon Allen are, which
That
is they
rush
did look
game was
they
pretty
did they did
rough.
look really good. They did look a lot better on Sunday,
Yeah,
but I think the Jets' success this season will rely more on them, or as much as Rodgers and Wilson, really. Because yeah, I
and
don't know. This is a weird offense.
it's usually like you're looking at Brees Hall to take like that massive leap, and it just doesn't appear to be doing that so far.
Yeah,
And again, like you got somebody that's coming back for the first time in a couple years now.
yeah,
I,
two
I
years,
think
2 years.
he's playing scared football, which isn't like Rodgers. Even if you want to say like,
I mean,
oh, he's getting older, whatever.
he's a
But like,
40-year-old man with an Achilles injury, man. Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
I don't know that I think feels like we're in agreement on the Jets and the Titans. Fun game here that I didn't learn much from, but it was a fun game. The Bucks get small revenge on the Lions for the playoffs last year. They go to Detroit and they win 20-16. Yeah, I literally have nothing for this game. Bucks. I was already high in the Bucks after last week. Just keep building, keep working. I think my only caveat for them is if Chris Godwin stays healthy, then this team is a real problem. That's really
yeah.
it. But for the Lions, I think you texted me something along these lines, but this felt really uncharacteristic for them because it felt like they were relying on their talent,
Yeah,
which they never don't. They haven't done under Dan Campbell because that's their calling card is effort, go bite guys in
I
the leg, go fight.
it just
But
felt
also it's worth noting this is possibly the worst game Ben Johnson has called for this Lions offense. I'm
yeah.
willing to
That's
bet.
that's what I
Probably.
really that's really what I came away with. I was just like, this is a weird like game. It should like it's all the worst instincts that you could get out of Goff and Ben Johnson as a duo.
Yeah, it's very surprising because they weren't. The Bucks defense was really great. Winfield is starting to look like Jesse Bates did last year for the Falcons. But yeah, they weren't willing to take risk and like dare the Bucks to match them.
Yeah.
They settled a lot for flat, like just run the ball the outside zone. Like yeah, they settled a lot instead of just like pushing a little.
which like it's stuff like that that's gonna keep Ben Johnson in coordinator status for
A
like another
coordinator, not a
year.
head
So
coach. Yeah.
yeah,
Right. Another big breakout offense from Sunday's games. The Cardinals dropped 41 on the Los Angeles Rams. They won 41-10. Um, I'll start because I'll let you. Obviously, I already know where we're going with this. The Cardinals will get some more airtime when we get to 4 downs. So I'll. Do you want me to just take this really quickly then,
take it
so I can
really
let you take? Okay,
quickly.
okay. For the Cardinals, there's a headline from this game, and it's Kyler Murray has entered the MVP conversation. I think everybody. 17 of 21, 266 yards, 3 touchdowns, 5 rushes for 59 yards. And here's the overrated bust wide receiver, Marvin Harrison Jr. He only racked up 4 catches for 130 yards and 2 touchdowns. And on the second touchdown, he hit the top speed 20.03 miles per hour. Yeah, these guys are for real, man. These guys are for real. I still think their defense is not very good. I will say Buda Baker looks really great. He's looked really reinvigorated, which might just be a matter of this team is better and he's also playing better. But yeah, this offense might just be good enough to help this team scratch the wild card.
Yeah.
If I'm a Cardinals fan, or if you're interested in the Cardinals at all, I would look at their calendar. I would circle 49ers in week 5 and Seahawks in week 12. Because if they win one or both of these games, like I said when we were talking about the Seahawks, this division could turn into a bloodbath. Like this could be last year's AFC North. This could get crazy. For the Rams, I wrote down pray to whatever deity you believe in. Because seriously, what is this injury report? My God, dude. I did see a funny quote, like hilarious. Like it's like Arrested Development level funny. Like McVay and Stafford said something along the lines of injuries aren't an excuse to not win. And I swear the gods just heard that and were like, I bet, bro. Bro, all right, man. I told my landlord to increase my rent so I could increase my grind. Like, Jesus Christ, dude.
It's real nasty that your wide receiver 1 and 2 is Tutu Atwell and Demarcus Robinson. Once you lose out on tackles. Like, this is, I mean, rough game from Kyron Williams as well. Like 12 for 25, and then they tried to bring in Corum, 8 for 28. Not very. Again, that was the Rams running game that I was more familiar with before Kyron Williams broke out. I was like, oh yeah, bad rushing game, whatever. But now they don't really have anything. So now you're looking at I saw a lot of weird plays where Matt Stafford was trying, and they were just trying to conjure up some miracle out of the very little that they had. Wild Tutu Atwell catches and shit. It's a bizarre game.
Shout out to Sonny Michel and Cam Akers. Cam Akers, who got a free carries for the Texans on Sunday.
Yeah.
And one more game before we get to our last big events. This was real pervert football, and not in a good way either. Steelers 13, Broncos 6. I'll let you take the floor first here.
I'd have one sentence for you. Bo Nix, I will see you in hell. Garbage quarterback. He's 39 years old, talking about I'm a rookie. Get his ass out of here. Ran from the grind in SEC. Now he's got to be QB1 in Denver. That's a bum. You might as well put in Zach Wilson and fucking trudge it out the rest of the year.
The 2024 Denver Broncos can be explained perfectly by the sequence that happened in the second half, where Bo Nix hit Josh Reynolds on a flea flicker for 49 yards.
Yeah.
And then the immediate next play, he threw a pick in the end zone on goal to go. That's the 2024 Broncos. Yeah. I wrote down one thing for the Steelers, which is Russell Wilson has found his calling as a Subway spokesperson, I think. I will say...
If I
What
was
were you gonna
Josh
say?
Reynolds, I would hang Bo Nix over a balcony like Suge Knight did Vanilla Ice.
Good night.
Because you're not about to throw me that 48 bomb and I'll be like, oh my god, we got momentum. And then you pick the shit off in the end zone. You sack of shit. Bo Nix will be found in hell.
Um, yeah, the Steelers' offense just doesn't look great. Um, the numbers don't jump off the page, but I will say, because I did get to watch a bit of this game because there were only 3 games in the afternoon, so I saw a good chunk of this on Red Zone. The numbers.
Svets told me to apologize about my take on the Steelers, that they weren't very good. He was like, they're 2-0, they're about to be 3-0. I'm like, no. Like, I'm not apologizing for y'all to be like the bare minimum.
They're gonna look.
I also
insinuated that maybe this would finally be the year Tomlin doesn't have a winning record. Like, I don't know. The voodoo is just so strong, but also, I don't know. Yeah, I guess congratulations on being the 2022 Chargers or the Vrabel Titans and losing like your first round playoff game. I guess. No offense.
You're gonna have a weird game against them next week.
Yeah, it'll be weird. They're gonna have a mid off. It's gonna be very interesting. I did have one actual note, which is the numbers don't jump off the page, especially for Justin Fields. 13 of 20, 117 yards. He did have a touchdown. He only rushed for 27 yards on 8 rushes, but tempo looked a lot better this week compared to last week, where that was a disgusting offense. But yeah, Steelers, congratulations on always being here. It's kind of annoying, but congratulations. Oh, sorry, I had one more note, which is, at the very least, I think the possibilities are more interesting with Justin Fields under center / playing quarterback for this team versus, I don't know, with Russell Wilson. I think I know what we're getting. So that's really it. And yeah, our last big game of the day, our last game of Sunday that we're going to talk about, which is, I think this is the fakest rivalry in the NFL right now. But it was a fun soap opera of a game. The Chiefs squeezed out a 26-25 win against the Cincinnati Bengals. I would like to start and wave, there's the world's tiniest violin. I'm going to wave the world's smallest victory flag because the Cincy offense looks really promising early on. I complained about how this offense relies on Jumar over there somewhere or T over there somewhere. They found Drew Sample and Mike Gesicki a lot in the first quarter, like good tempo, quick game, hit guys in stride, use the middle of the field. But yeah, it didn't look great. The rest, especially the second half, didn't look great, is how I'm going to put it politely. Zach Moss had 34 yards on 12 rushes. Chase Brown had 31 yards on 4 rushes. But I don't know what to say about this Bengals offense other than they need to make Jamar Chase happy in some way, which I guess they do not want to do that with money. Or this offensive line needs to be better, which I don't know how you do that with no cap space and your first round pick not playing. So,
well,
I don't know.
I have a week. I have the big overreaction for the week. Put the Bengals in Rice. Put the Bengals in Rice.
I think Bengals fans will agree with you.
Over. It's over. I don't know what to say, because if I'm Joe Burrow, I'm looking at you treat my guy. You drafted Jamar Chase because he's my guy. He's the LSU guy. You want that chemistry. And if you're going to treat my guy like that, how the fuck are you going to treat me? Now, you done gave me the contract, but at what rate
I want to interject for a second. The vibes are just so funny because they already paid him. Like, why is it like this? Why is it like this? Just pay the other guy. Pay his bestie. Like, just do it. I don't get it. What's the problem?
So what's going to happen?
No team in the league has this problem. Like, if you don't want to give it to T, like, do they want to pay T instead? That's what I don't get. Because every team
they want to restart is what they want to do. But
doesn't make sense.
But Joe Burrow shouldn't want to restart. And this is where I uh, had a massive discussion with Svets about this, where I think Joe Burrow, if they do not fix the current structure for their offense, if Jamar Chase leaves or gets traded, if T. Higgins leaves because they played around with his money for so long, if he's left with nothing and they got to play the draft shit again, Joe Burrow should very earnestly request to go to the Vikings.
Woo.
Now, I know
Spicy.
that because the NFL doesn't really have a precedent for it. The last time we had an elite level quarterback ask out was Deshaun Watson. Now you could bring in the very problematic case and whatnot as a reason why they pushed through with that case, but I think it sets a precedent for a team like the Texans where they have success in the draft, where it's like we're just going to restart. This doesn't look right. None of our guys want to be here. We're going to clean the slate, new coach, new personnel, and then they're going to draft it from scratch. Similarly, you're going to put Burrow with an LSU guy, and Burrow should be the one to be like, listen, like, y'all gave me the money, but like clearly you guys aren't being very serious, and I gave you everything that I could there, and he can make that decision. But basically, what I'm getting at is that this Bengals team needs to restart real bad. Mm. They are. You could chop it up to the refs. The refs definitely had a real ugly game, and so did the Chiefs. I mean, this was a winnable game for the Bengals, but the fact that this was a game that they should have won, and even if they did win, why do I still feel not great about the Bengals? That's what I came away with. I was like, even if they won, like, why does this not feel like a victory? Joe Burrow walking off the field with a Chris Benoit face was insane. I was like, nobody wants to be here. Obviously, they're gonna start by just firing Zach Taylor and hiring somebody else. That's where I think Mike Vrabel comes in. If they've got the stones to cut Zach Taylor loose in the middle of the season, I think Mike Vrabel would come in like immediately. And I'd have to see how the team would feel about it at that point. Like, if they react well to somebody who's actually in charge and not a floating clipboard. But I think the Bengals are done. This is very comfortably the worst team in that division, that if the Steelers weren't so bad. Like, if the Steelers had a quarterback, like, the Bengals would very comfortably sit at the bottom of the ranking.
I never know how to respond when you hit me with the dogs are in the enclosed pool area joke. Yeah, I don't know. I didn't feel that strongly before we started about Cincy, but yeah, you might be right. Just because it never occurred to me. It never occurred to me that the Bengals are just like the most vibes reliant team in the league. Which I don't know why I didn't notice that, because I literally myself pointed out last week that their entire defense is Trey Hendrickson.
Yeah.
And I guess when Patrick Mahomes decides he wants to throw directly at Cam Taylor-Britt, which is still hilarious to me. And also, it was a great catch, a really great catch.
That was one of the best interceptions I've ever seen. But also,
I texted you this. How do you underthrow a go route to Xavier Worthy? And yeah, why? I'm so confused.
Like, that's what confused. Like, that's a great catch, but like, Patrick Mahomes is looking at absolutely nothing there. He just threw whatever the fuck and that's where I don't know why the fuck he struggles against a team that's not very good on either side of the ball.
Yeah, I hate to take away credit from the Bengals, but like, a serious but also rhetorical question. Yeah, why do the Chiefs, and specifically Patrick Mahomes, suck ass against this team?
Yeah,
it's so weird.
And again, like, this doesn't really tell me anything about the Chiefs more so than like every once in a while Patrick Mahomes is gonna he's gonna have like a depression spell and underthrow it to the fastest person on the planet.
Yeah. I did want to walk away with one positive thing, which is, Steve Spagnuolo. You'll always be a star to me, man. He had a weird game too. They were really shy setting pressure throughout this whole game, and even though the Bengals offense wasn't at like full strength, they kind of let Burrow play mostly in rhythm, which is
Is
really
is
weird because I think if they had just like sent pressure a little more often, or if they diversified their packages a little more, this game would have been like a wrap much earlier on.
I've, I, I had this question last year. Is there a
Hmm.
reason why Spag doesn't have like any head coaching consideration during these off seasons?
I mean, I remember he was not great with the was it the Rams? Yeah, he was not great in his two or three tops years with the
When was it?
Rams. Mid decade. That was mid decade. I don't remember.
Sam Bradford era, and that's a
Yeah,
decade ago. Like I don't think that's fair to him. I'm
yeah.
surprised.
I don't have more information on this.
I'm surprised nobody's like taking a flyer on it, especially when you look at how good he does in like these big pressure situations and the Super Bowl and whatnot.
I think it's more of
You'd think
a.
that would do something. It's not like he's Eric Benimi where like the players can't stand his guts.
I think it's more of a. I have no info on this, so I'm totally going with my gut and I'm projecting. But I think Spagnolo is more of a love of the game, not love of the fame type of thing. He's like, I want to work on defense and I want to do some absolutely perverted shit with blitz packages.
I
Like
wish
I don't even care about like the winning per se. Like I just really want to win these defensive battles. That's the vibe it gives me. Like you know what I mean? Like I obviously it's not that he doesn't care about winning, but it's like when he's locked in and he's on that field with the clipboard, he's like, I'm gonna send McDuffie around the corner right here, and that like gives him like such a rush. Like that's what it seems like to me.
I wish more coaches felt that way instead of
I
taking
mean,
like
yeah,
because the Dolphins coach McDaniel, like he should feel like that.
uh, I did have one shout out with regards to Spagnolo because yeah, like I said, they did send a lot of pressure first 3 quarters. Late in the fourth, they disguised double coverage on Jamar Chase, and I think Chamari Connor's playing like it looks like soft man, and so he's leaning. But right before the snap, he times it well, and they send him around the edge, and he gets a sack that forces them to punt with 3:30 left in the game, and that was the Bengals' last drive in the game. That's Steve Spagnuolo, baby. That that is Kansas City Chiefs defense, which unfortunately I will have to watch myself at some point this season. um, yeah, those are all the games from the weekend. Uh, I don't want to dwell too much. I want to go straight into four downs. I don't have a lot of crazy shout outs, so I'll just go through all of mine. I've got three, but because one is very short. One I've already mentioned.
The
Uh,
three you've got, I already went briefly into the Saints Kubiak thing, which was the one of them that I marked down. So you can go through your three, and I'll just take the one.
okay. First one, real short. Feels weird to shout out a player from this team. Also, we just trashed them, but Bengals wide receiver Andre Iosivas, my Romanian Filipino king, with 2 catches for 7 yards and 2 touchdowns. Rack 'em, baby. Rack 'em. Filipinos catching touchdown in the NFL. This is modern America, baby. Kidding me. Yeah,
You
actual
sent
shout out.
you sent me that name, and I was like, "Who the fuck is that?" And I had to look. I was like, "Oh shit, he just got a touchdown."
I already mentioned my next shout out, who's my first real strong shout out, which is Geno Smith, who again I thought was fantastic on Sunday against a really strong Patriots defense that I don't think people are giving enough credit for. But just to remind people, he went 33 for 44 on his passes, 327 yards, and 1 touchdown. I think this might even be the best offensive game the Seahawks have played since Gino got there. Not literally the best, but in terms of we need to earn this win, and they earned it. I did have an interesting stat, actually, unrelated or semi-related to Gino. DK Metcalf and Jackson Smith and Jigba are the first pair of Seattle teammates, each with 10 plus catches and 100 plus receiving yards in the same game in team history. Yeah, they earned that game. And then my last shout out didn't get the win, but our beautiful, beautiful boy, our beautiful blonde boy, who is, for my money, the 1A, 1B for Defensive Player of the Year so far. Lions defensive end Aiden Hutchinson. You will always be a star to me. I love you in my heart of hearts. 5 tackles, 4.5 sacks, 1 forced fumble. Whew, that boy is moving. Um, Just a quick sidebar. We've just to each other, we've mentioned, or it feels like the media is also getting tired of voting for Myles Garrett, T.J. Watt, or Micah Parsons, which is I think people forget these awards are narrative awards as much as no one
Yeah,
wants to admit that. Like, we try to be as serious as possible every year, but at the end of the day, they are narrative awards. And so, if I was a betting person, I would throw at least a few bucks on Hutchinson or Anderson. Granted, the odds have probably changed after 2 weeks,
yeah.
but yeah, I think we're looking at two of the very best edge rushers in this league, and they will be two of the leaders of the most exciting defenses in this league for the next 2-3 years to come. But let me butter you up a little here. So Saints, we gave them a pretty healthy shout out. Shout out to Clint Kubiak for reviving what was a very stale offense the past entire 3 years, really. Not
Mm-hmm.
just post Sean Payton / Drew Brees, but just really, even with their talent, they've underperformed a lot. But this next team, which is we continue to give Caleb and this team their flowers, the Arizona Cardinals. Um, I keep thinking they're ahead of schedule, but maybe they are who you thought they were. Yes, Caleb, take us away. Who are we shouting out on the Cardinals?
Um, God, there's a couple little ones. Obviously, like I could shout out Kyler Murray and Marvin Harrison. Briefly, I'll touch Kyler Murray. I mean, just insanely efficient. 3 touchdowns, 15 yards per throw. And obviously, you got these big fucking plays on Marvin Harrison, but he also was able to spread the love with guys like Trey McBride. But I
Shout out
did.
Colorado State.
I wanted to note that James Conner is fantastic. 122 yards, 21 rushes, almost 6 yards a carry, and he opens up that Cardinals offense where every time you think that Kyler Murray will be in a position where obviously you'll do them like short ass little runs, off of insane pressure, which in fairness, sure, the Rams are banged up, but this is still a strong Rams defense. I mean, they still got to go against guys
Absolutely.
like Jared Verse and whatnot. And again, their personnel is, leagues above most other teams. So when you notice guys like Connor be able to take advantage of the rush, and then you'd see Kyler Murray go, 12 yards a rush out of each of his 59 yards, 5 attempts. I mean, Lord forbid, like that offense just looks, it's beautiful. I don't forget who they're. I really lack the words to convey just how beautiful that
You
offense
know
is.
why this Cardinals offense really is so genuinely exciting, other than they're new?
Why?
They're off. There's in all sports. There's that meme of the guys on the bus, the advanced stats looker, and that boy nice.
Oh boy,
They're both.
bro,
They're both. You get them both.
they
Oh
get
my god.
you get both,
You
and
got them both.
really,
That boy's nice.
I guess my primary shout out is more of like a concept. I want to shout out how the Cardinals offense reacts to the pass rush is really my primary shout out there, because you could have it very. I think me and you both talked about the fact that a lot of quarterbacks shrink under these blitz coverages.
Mm-hmm.
They forget how to play fucking football. And there were a few plays where Kyler Murray just like, usually you could see him like fucking run all around, and the shit looks like he's running around with his head chopped off. But this, like, he looks so poised. He makes an easy throw to Marvin Harrison. On one of these plays, I wish I had like the tech to like fucking throw up a video like it's NFL Live and shit.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
but yeah, there was one play where like he was just scrambling in and out, but rather than him look frantic, it never looked for a second like this was just an excuse for him to rush out with the ball. He was always looking to make a play with his arm, and he always was able to pull that off in a way that guys like hell, even Lamar, he'll be in situations where it's like, ah, fuck it, I'm not gonna throw here because like, sure, you can blame it on his receivers, but it's also just a gut instinct for him to be like, there's no fucking play here.
Yeah.
I can make a bigger play with my legs. Kyler Murray always was just like, all right, I'm gonna try and advance this with the arm first, and if I gotta run, then I'll fucking run. And I think that says a lot about this Cardinals offense. They're so strong. Briefly, I don't. Their defense isn't like amazing, but I don't hate them either. Scrappy is like the prime is the is the op-
I'm definitely guilty of throwing the word scrappy around, but they're definitely scrappy in the sense that they're not very talented,
yeah,
but
like
they're moving. They're
this
putting in the effort. Yeah.
this feels like it because it's a whole lot of 28 somethings out there that have been like kind of roaming around as like the second option on like a linebacker set, and you're seeing them take on these like these first on the lineup sort of possessions, and it, like, seems like they're still adjusting. I think maybe next year they can really overhaul on that side of the ball, especially since you got Gannon as their head coach. But yeah, man, I think there's a lot of potential there. And I don't know if Buda Baker is locked in for the long haul. I remember the last couple seasons he was arguing about contract bullshit. So I'm not sure if he got paid yet. But yeah, I love the Cardinals, and I think there is real potential for them to be like a real surprise in the wild card.
Yeah, Kyler Murray reinvigorated and looking better than looking as good as, arguably better than he was in his first, I will say first peak under Cliff Kingsbury.
I wanted to keep that as relatively brief because I did want to talk about them a little bit in the 2 minute warning.
Oh yeah, sure. I do want to add a spontaneous shout out to Drew Petzing, offensive coordinator, second year offensive coordinator. Yeah, this team looks fantastic. Do you want to guess what Drew Petzing's first coaching experience was?
I couldn't tell you.
Take a wild guess.
It feels pretty predictable to be like, oh yeah, he's on the 49ers. He's like a fucking special teams guy. Tell me.
He is from the Shanahan tree,
Of course.
but his first coaching experience was as a volunteer student assistant at Harvard.
Oh God. I don't know.
That's so funny.
Don't make me feel bad about rooting for the Cardinals because that just doesn't feel right.
No, but his first real coaching experience was at Yale. It was as an outside linebackers coach.
Wait, what?
At Yale. Yeah, this is in 2012. Which is I love when you get coaches who are playing the other side of the ball and then they get to the side of the ball they want. And I'm like, yeah, I don't give a shit. I'm not coaching goddamn linebackers. I'm trying to run some passes over here. But
that's so weird.
All right, that was 4 downs. You're now at the 2 minute warning, which I am forcing us / challenging us to actually try to keep to 2 minutes. I'll go first, so I'll try to keep it brief. Ravens-Cowboys on Sunday. It's early, but it feels like this game is significant enough for both of the teams that it could make or break either of their early season vibes. I just have one question for both teams, which is, can the Ravens just, I use this word like very like purposely, can the Ravens just fucking assert themselves offensively? Or frankly, do they have a shorter ceiling than we thought? Which is like, that's what it's starting to feel like. And then for the Cowboys, like I mentioned, after getting blown out by the Saints, just reset, like rest and reset, like really, like just go in a darkness retreat or something. I don't know. I guess those work, or maybe they don't, based on how the Jets are playing. But yeah, just rest and reset, and just remember week 1. Oh yeah, hyperbole aside, just be more physical. Don't let up the big plays, which I think should be easier offense against this Ravens offense. And then yeah, don't force your defense to play from behind the 8 ball. No, that's really it. I really think this game will be interesting. Like, this is going to be make or break for one of these teams. I really feel like it. Yeah, what have you got for us for next week to look for?
So I'm gonna roll with the Lions Cardinals. I think the Lions should be a little more comfortable on the offensive side of the ball. But the Bucks game, I think the Bucks and the Cardinals have like a similar sort of vibe in terms of defense, where it's like it's scrappy, but that they're not like super imposing. the way that like a Lions defense is. So I do wonder if the Lions continue like a weird sort of slump on that offensive side of the ball.
Hmm.
On the Cardinal side of the ball, obviously I talked about Kyler's poise in these scrambles against the Rams pass rush. If he can persevere that Aiden Hutchinson attack, I think it'll be interesting to see how Kyler and Marvin match up against that Lions secondary.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, Marvin's physicality will be a really interesting challenge to that secondary, which has been fairly good so far. Definitely way better than it was last year. But yeah.
And yeah, I mean that was the pretty big obvious one. Ravens Cowboys interesting. I didn't look at it mostly just because the vibes just doesn't feel right about that game at all.
That's kind of what I'm interested in, though. I really believe that whoever loses this game is going to come out way worse, whether that's in reality, in the media, or both even.
It'll be interesting to see how that rushing attack goes against the Cowboys, because the Cowboys do kind of pride themselves on that box.
Both ways, like I mentioned, because Dowdle and Elliott as a backfield just has not looked good so far. All right, but that's it for us. It told us to keep us to a tight 90, and we failed, but we'll try to do better next week.
Yeah, tight-ish. Only missed 10 minutes after. It's fine. We didn't hover towards 2.
I got one question for you before we leave. What's your favorite movie you've watched this past month?
Oh, shit. Because I've been watching a lot of shitters lately. I guess it would be Apocalypse Now, because I watched that in theaters.
Did watch it in theaters. That is a great... oh, man, those helicopters... Those beautiful helicopters on the sunset to start.
More recently, I rewatched Life with Eddie Murphy and Martin Lawrence. The direction sucks so bad, but Eddie Murphy
and both of them are playing in a totally different movie.
Yeah. There's so much heart that isn't evident in the amount of like those little bullshit sequences of the direction's bad, but like there's so much heart behind what Eddie Murphy is doing in that movie.
No, I got an easy answer to my own question. I finally had the privilege of watching my favorite movie of all time, which is Michael Mann's masterpiece from 1995, the seminal Los Angeles crime movie known as Heat.
Crazy, right?
And I got to watch. It was beautiful. I got to watch it at the Vista, which was my first time actually being there. But it was awesome. Obviously, I knew all the gunfire would be really loud. The ending, I thought I was having like an out of body experience, because the planes were just so goddamn loud. Like I totally forget the ending, because like I'm so used to watching it at home, and so I'm like, oh yeah, this ends on the literal runway at LAX.
Yeah.
And when I got out of the theater, it was still light outside, so that was jarring enough going from a dark theater, like a pitch black theater.
Yeah.
Because if you've never been to, if you live in LA, or if you've been to LA and you've never been to either the New Beverly or the Vista, they do treat films with like proper grace and handling, because it is pitch black in that theater. I did have to get up to pee at one point really badly, because it's a 3-hour movie. I've never done that before. I purposely got up during the scene where Vincent is driving to go pull over Neil on the freeway, because I knew it'd be a long driving sequence.
Mm-hmm.
But it was pitch black, and it was kind of sure. But oh yes, my original point, which is when I got out of that theater, my ears, when people say their ears are ringing, mine felt like I was drowning, like they were caved in, and like I got out, and cars sounded like what they sound like to me right now, wearing headphones. Like they sound muffled, like.
You had that same situation that happened to that one cop who couldn't hear anything at the beginning of the movie. You had that same feeling where it was like, you looking at me funny.
At the very beginning of the movie,
yeah.
All right, well, that was a lot of fun. We'll try to do better again next week. Signing off. Wherever and whenever you're listening to us, good morning, good afternoon, or good night. Thank you for listening, and we will see you again to talk more shit next week.
Yeah.